Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our hosts, Sri Rajgopalan, Peter V.S. Bond, and Bryan Gildenberg explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CPG Guys podcast. I am your humble co-host, but I'm not so humble, let's be honest.
When's he coming?
He might show up. PVSB, and of course, when I'm not podcasting, you know I'm Partnership Acceleration Lead at Flywheel Digital, a managed services company that helps brands win and grow their business at e-commerce. I am joined today by two people very familiar to this audience. First and foremost, second of the three CPG guys.
I don't think I'm foremost.
Well, I'm not foremost, but I'll just say this. It's good to have here the founder and CEO of Confluencer Commerce, the managing director of North America for Retail Cities, host of the CPG Guys Fast Forward podcast, and the Gildenberg Omni comment on our LinkedIn page every Thursday. Of course, I'm talking about Bryan Gildenberg. Bryan, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Peter. My goal is really just to get my intro so long that we preclude any actual content from actually entering the episode. That's my
defender of the faith.
It's my quest. So
good to have you on board.
So let's get to our actual foremost goal.
I know she just appeared as one of the keynote speakers at the Retail Media Summit, which we are recording this episode at in Chicago. She is the CEO and founder of Allume Group. She is also one of the co-hosts of the Fresh 4 News segment that appears at the beginning of each and every CPG Guys episode. Of course, I am talking about the formidable and incomparable Andrea Leigh. Andrea, how are you?
She's systematic.
I'm great.
She's
glad to be here with you guys today.
We love spending time with you. It's so much fun. This is great that the three of us could spend a couple of days. Usually when we're at a conference, it's a really busy conference like Shop Talk, where we pass each other in the hall and maybe produce 5 or 6 minutes of content. But other than that, it's great to have you here where we've been able actually to canoodle for a couple of days and compare notes and do things together. So thank you very much.
Yes.
So we are, as I mentioned, we're at the Path to Purchase Institute Retail Media Summit. And I should probably make mention of how grateful we are for P2PI giving us both the space to record this and another episode. We did our 300th episode, which we recorded with Kara Pratt, upcoming, and also to have the three of us on stage 5 separate times, independently of each other, and then as a collective where we'll knock it out of the park tonight before we close up shop.
Yeah, it's like an encore, like at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and then we all get on stage at the end and we play like some old Chuck Berry classic or something.
Don't we all just we all have our separate music repertoire and we come together to play a classic. So that's kind of what we're going to try to do today with that. But what we want to do is give you our flavor for themes, impressions of this conference. It is centered around what we commonly refer to as our most favorite topic on the CPG Guys, which is retail media.
It's actually baseball, so which is why we got Andrea here today. So
I know. She's keeping us honest and not talking about baseball. But what we wanted to do was just have a conversation about what we were talking about, what we heard people talking about, what makes this particular event a little bit different than a lot of the other trade shows you're familiar with hearing us talk about, be it Shop Talk or Grocery Shop or P2P Live or Can or anything else. But we'll start with Andrea, because Andrea, you were on. You went on as one of the keynote speakers right before Kara Pratt from 8451. So would love to hear and share with our audience what you were talking about and why you essentially set the foundational stage for how people had to think about this conference.
Yeah, I mean, I had the challenge of kicking us off yesterday, and I think what I tried to do, I don't know how successfully, was to try to bring the room up to speed on some of the dynamics that we're seeing in this space. So there's a lot of data out there. I'm sure throughout all of the sessions, they had a chance to see a lot about the growth of retail media and how it's going in store and the different big players in the space. insofar as both retail media networks and agencies and providers and things. But I think the dynamics are what are really interesting and will help them all figure out how to navigate the future of retail media. So really thinking about like the rationale the retailers have for kind of pushing it onto the advertisers, what the advertisers need in order to spend more, some of the cloud solutions that are coming to allow the brands to do better targeting and gain more insights about their shoppers, as well as maybe like where we think the future of it is, which I think is going to be more AI driven and less keyword driven,
Yep.
as well as moving it more into physical stores and screens in physical stores. So we talked about some of those dynamics to kind of kick off the conference.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts on that. First and foremost, what I loved about what you did is you actually exposed the audience to your framework, which you call media. I'll let you talk more about that. But you also instructed one of the courses in your curriculum and allowed everybody to become certified and even put that badge on their LinkedIn profile, which I thought was great branding on your part. So I want you to talk about that. I do want to make one mention, though, of this whole AI thing because it's really important. In a recent investor meeting, I think Bill Gates had uttered the comment around AI, saying that the battle is not introducing AI into an individual retailer's platform. It's actually about who's going to put generative AI effectively into the personal assistant, because in the future, he says the race is to have the personal assistant get to know you as a consumer, and they'll do all the shopping on your behalf. And that's probably where there's a lot of focus going on.
Yeah, keep in mind that Bill Gates runs a search engine that has a 6x market share gap to the market leader and has a running through the streets naked interest in disrupting search.
Fair enough. But when I listened to him say that, I said, that's actually quite intuitive. I think about the fact that if I have a personal assistant and my personal assistant understands my likes and dislikes, my family's food consumption, allergies, lifestyle, other things like that, I'd rather just say to my personal assistant, go find me what I want conceptually, and they bring back the actual products that I need. I shouldn't have to say, go get me toilet paper or go get me this. I should be able to say, I'm throwing a party this weekend. And with a couple of questions, boom, it comes back and gives me my entire assortment. That's, maybe that's a pipe dream, but I think that's where we're moving.
I think we'll get there. I'd love it if they could just go ahead and schedule my kids' doctor's appointments.
Thank you.
Let's just start there. Start small.
Yeah, but
then we can start planning my parties.
Yeah. We'll go into that, but talk a little bit about the framework you exposed everybody to.
Yeah, so our framework's called MEDIA, and it stands for Maximize Readiness, Establish Goals, Design Strategy, Incorporate Tools, and Analyze and Optimize. And the idea here is that we often see manufacturers and advertisers really jumping to like budgeting and trying to figure out how much to spend on the different platforms and across platforms. And really, you shouldn't spend anything until you figure out what you're trying to accomplish, because each retail media network is a little bit different and has a different shopper base, and you're going to have different goals for each one. So for example, with Instacart, you're going to want to get into past purchases because that's where a lot of the cart ads come from. Mm-hmm. And that's a different demographic of a shopper than the one that shops on Amazon, where you may be more of a market leader and protecting your own brand and your position in search. So that idea about like making sure you're retail ready, that's maximized readiness, and then establishing goals and then carrying that all the way through to how you execute and how you measure. It's not all an ROI story. If you're trying to get into new households or you're trying to drive awareness for the brand, ROI is not going to tell you if you're doing that. So making sure that your KPIs align with your objectives.
We're going to put a hyperlink in the digital liner notes of this episode to Andrea's site where you can learn more about the media framework. So please do. Bryan.
Yeah.
Andrea stole the show right from the beginning, but then she was followed by, of course, Kara Pratt from.
Well, let's not leave Andrew's bit yet, because I think there's a couple of things. One, I do think that the way you put that on stage, where you basically said, look, if you don't know what it is, you said, look, I get asked all the time what we should spend on retail media. I ask clients, what are you trying to do? They tell me I don't know, and if you do that, the answer is zero. And that was one of the 2 or 3 real mic drop moments of the whole show. Actually, because I really do think there's an enormous amount of nonsense in this
There's
space.
a lot of belief I have to be in it, and so I have to put my money in it. And I thought Andrea definitely said, no, if you don't know what you're doing, do not waste your money, because you will waste it if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. And I thought that was remarkably clear. I think the other piece that you hit, which I think is a really important one for the space, and we'll get to Kara's thing in a minute, but I think part of the problem that Kara's trying to solve, as well as everybody else, you talked a little bit about the difference in, just basic attribution windows, as a for instance, between Instacart and Amazon.
Yes.
And that was one of the things, and we'll put this in a bucket for later, that I found, I don't know if frustrating is the right word, but I think incomplete about the content of this conference, is that I don't think people are really addressing some of the actual problems that are on the table. I think people are talking in vague generalities about some of them. Measurement got some good conversation, like the one you had with Don Humby, but got some really vague conversation. And I think there are some really specific problems with measurement in this space about how it's actually measured. You hit on one of the most important ones, which is that the basic unit of measure in this is basically Amazon's ROAS calculation. And Amazon's ROAS calculation is deeply flawed. So that
it's deeply flawed, but it's also it's being used as a panacea for a whole bunch of different tactics.
Yeah, and that's all true. But if you just start there, right? Yeah. Don't go to the next step. Just start there. Everybody's trying to match that ROAS number, right?
As opposed to doing the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where the ecosystem gets kind of muddled in a hurry.
Sure.
We like to say every retailer gives themselves an A.
Yeah. Well, they have to. Well,
A plus.
Well, no, but they have to, because if they don't, the money's going to go to Amazon, because their ROAS calculation is going to be higher. You can run exactly the same program on two retail things, get exactly the same outcome, and Amazon's ROAS calculation will be higher than the other retailers. And that's something. These are the kinds of things I wish we were talking about a little bit more. And but so I thought that was great. So the way you brought that up,
I felt like a lot of the sessions kind of lacked specificity around what is actionable. And particularly around the measurement piece. And I think, this is a great start. Like this conference is a great start to this conversation. But I think the next piece of the conversation is getting some of the players together that are actually in the weeds on measuring it. Right. And measuring it across platforms. And I think that would be hearing from some more advertisers who are really deep in that, as well as some providers.
Yeah, some agencies as well.
To solve the problem, even if they're not solving it correctly. Yeah. Because I've seen a lot of the demos, and I think it's really hard. At least having a conversation about what they're trying to accomplish and how they're thinking about it.
At a minimum, I'm encouraged that measurement is a component of almost every conversation I've seen here.
Sure.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
There is awareness of the need to do this. The old days of just investing and doing something fun are long gone now. Now that we're seeing CEOs mentioning it in their comments on quarterly earnings calls about how retail media.
Well, you call some that, Peter. You're the single person responsible.
Sorry for doing that. I know. I'd love to say I was, but
you do say you are.
No, I say I wish I were. I say I wish I were. I said, do not. There's no causation there. There's only correlation between what I said to the CEO of Procter & Gamble in 2022 and what he did in 2023. There is no causation. There might be, but who knows? Again, look, I'm not being humble. Sorry. So Bryan, why don't you jump into
Speaking of humble.
There was a big announcement that Kroger made at this show, and we talk about it in episode 300 with Kara Pratt, but why don't you unpack that and give us your POV?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of pieces to that. Well, one, if we can just start with we'll start with the announcement. And I also do want to just introduce an idea that I thought Kara hit both in the podcast that's coming up as well as in her presentation. Because Kroger talked a lot about they're basically bringing their ad tech in house, right? And they're going to run it all off of their own platform, and they're suspending some of the other things that they've done historically from a platform point of view, and that's fine. And Kara talked a lot about, look, we're not getting rid of the partnerships that we have with other people.
So the third-party tools that allow brands to manage through a single platform investment in different retail media platforms, that still stays.
Yeah. Well, and they basically brought what I guess in essence is their self-serve capability in house, and took that away from Promote IQ and some other things. Right. The phrase she used a lot more in the podcast actually than her speech is this idea of trusted bridges, and I think that's a really important concept. In that, I don't know that any part of the media ecosystem, even leaving retail media aside for a minute, I don't think any part of the media ecosystem is going to have the whole answer going forward. Like, it's just, as you start to get the potential to link together all that we can know about purchase and behavior and context and the removal of friction from the purchase opportunity, and all that we can know about how we influence and drive, it's going to be that ability to connect stuff. I think that's really important. I mean, she talked a lot about the importance to advertisers of being able to more holistically plan the retail media component of their pieces so that they can then bolt that into other things. Like, if you have to plan retail media in 3 or 4 buckets just for Kroger, and then try to bolt that into a larger retail media ecosystem, then bolt that ecosystem into your media plan writ large, that's just a lot of bolting. So I think that just in essence, a lot of what they're trying to do is simplify. I think the point Kara made repeatedly, and I'll shut up for a minute after that. But
I just had a question.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Like, how is she suggesting doing it then, if you're not kind of making it a component of this thing that's a component of something else?
Well, basically what they did is they took the self-serve component and they just basically put it all on the same tech platform, so that you can do your managed serve and your self-serve as a brand through the same interface, essentially, okay. Right? I think the assumption always was that the self-serve brands would be different brands than the managed service brands. Yeah. So they're having 2 separate platforms. But in real life, I mean, we all know this from the work we do with the big CPG companies, but they'll manage like their tail brands way different than their big brands. So I think there's an assumption that the smaller brands would be, you know,
if you've got a tail brand that's an emerging brand that's niche, they don't want to have to necessarily pay the investment price for a managed service solution. Yeah. They want to be more thrifty, more scrappy. And so this will allow them to, for most of their portfolio, use managed services, and then for the rest of their portfolio, use self-serve.
Yeah, it's the same companies though that are using. So her suggestion is simply just to try to make that part a little bit easier to use, and to allow. Then if you've got all that in one planning platform, it's just easier as a company to then be able to figure out what you're planning. I think the bigger point she was making, I mean, although that was a big announcement and happened here, but the broader point she was making, which was way more important to me, is her, I think, quite correct contention that retail media isn't a thing. Retail media is media. And that's what that I thought was,
she said that loud and clear.
Yes, very for both actually. Yes. Yeah. I thought that was I think that's a really important takeaway. And the way I kind of think about that, and Andrea will get a kick out of this because it goes back to some of your early days in e-com, right? Like when you were running around the world with Eric Heller and all the other people 10 years ago trying to convince people that e-commerce was going to happen. And you went into any company, and e-commerce was always like the last pillar of their strategy house, right? It was that. It's like, we're going to be good at lots of things that are important, and then we're going to be good at e-commerce. And over time, what people begin to realize is that pillar had to hit a tipping point. It had to tip and go across everything. And I think Kara's contention was essentially that, which is that retail media, which is the last pillar of every strategy house and a media plan today, that's got to tip, and it's got to become really a bigger part of everything in terms of measurement, but really in terms of holistic objectives, to get back to the point you're making before. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if I'm trying to increase my influence and reduce my friction, I got to plan those things together. I can't have one set of people trying to increase influence and one set of people trying to reduce friction.
So while everybody's talking about measurement, everybody's talking about retail, I will say that there have been not as much as I would have thought, but this concept of generative AI, you know, all under the umbrella of ChatGPT, which is the brand name of OpenAI solution, has been not quite as predominant. Maybe it's because we are at a retail media, and where generative AI will play a major role is probably in content that may have more to do with the SEO side of things, the search engine optimization, the search engine marketing. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you're hearing.
I mean, I think it's about to transform this whole space. Like, we've built an entire ecosystem around keyword optimization and keyword bidding through ad tech. And there's a whole cottage industry of providers that do that. My old agency was one of them. Mm-hmm. But I think we're going to fast move away from keywords. And really, the search behavior is going to be a lot more contextual. Mm-hmm. And that will allow some of these search engines or virtual assistants or whatever to access a lot more contextual data around products, which I think is going to include user-generated content, even just within the retailer websites. Like, if you think about on an Amazon product page, the titles and bullets are very small. very small amount of real estate. The lion's share of the real estate are all of the rich customer reviews, and that unstructured data can be leveraged very well by AI. So I think
it can be leveraged very well for doing not only presenting it to the user, the shopper, but mining it for a brand manager.
Absolutely.
Can I stun you and ask you a question? So if you're looking at Amazon, right? Just to use a hypothetical, how different do you think something like a PDP would be in the future as a result of what you're talking about here? Like, how would it actually look different? Like, or do we know? Obviously we don't know, but I'd just be curious for your thoughts, because you've done some diving into.
Is it more about how you get to the PDP, less so about how?
I don't know. That's
the PDP. I mean, the PDP is just it's content. I think AI is going to transform the content you have on it.
Yeah, I would wonder if you'd need a PDP. Like,
really?
You need images. I mean, AI isn't.
So we've already,
like, ChatGPT kind of applications aren't able to render images to you yet. They probably will be.
Well, there are some things like
DALL-E does.
Well,
sister project ChatGPT.
And Midjourney's been doing that for a while too. Yeah. So
they can render images, but like as a part of the search, right? So like
you return it as an outcome. Okay, I gotcha.
So in real time, give you an image that like if I sit there and say, I want to know what that couch would look like, find me a couch that's going to fit in my living room and show it to me.
Yeah.
Right. That's something
and show it in my living room,
in real time.
Right?
That's what I mean.
In real time. And so I wonder if you even need a PDP, if that's how if you just need to like index all of this product information. So I mean,
maybe it's a customized PDP. Maybe the content that you see when you get to the PDP is tailored to what's important to you.
But I guess I wonder, like, why would you even need it at that point? You could just ask the questions that you want to know.
Yeah.
Right?
So basically the PDP becomes like something that sits in almost like a content warehouse or something, and gets surfaced by the question that you're asking rather than being a destination in and of itself.
Right.
What you're trying to say?
Sort of how PDPs started off on Amazon. I mean, they weren't necessarily
destinations. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
That's kind of like really ugly pages.
Yeah.
That just had a little bit of product information on them. They've gotten really beautiful over time as Amazon has released new, templates and ways for brands to include branded messaging. But I mean, I think the data shows like people don't read that. They're using search, they're shopping on mobile like 80%, and they're just flipping through every single image.
Yeah.
And they're not reading a lot of that content. It's really just for search index.
No, the more content you have below the fold, the more in a mobile first environment you have to keep scrolling. And after about 3 swipes, you've lost them.
It's the images in the UGC.
That's right.
That's really what shoppers use. So if you didn't have to like muddle through all that UGC and you could just ask a virtual assistant questions that are very surgical, like, does this tend to run small, or, is there oil in this moisturizer? That would be so much faster than digging through all that information. So I guess I don't know that you need it anymore.
We should run a conference basically with you two just talking about this, and I should go watch. But seriously though, I mean, like there's a whole raft of stuff in here. I mean, I think you compellingly put that case forward. And as said, to Peter's point, I think a lot of the work here is very focused on some of the stuff that's happening in the retail media space, and that's good. And I think that this space is starting to get to a point where it's a little bit better organized, which has the virtue of people kind of understanding what some of the content areas are. I think one of the downsides to that better organization is a fair amount of repetition in terms of what people are trying to do. Sure. And it's almost like when younger kids are playing together and they tend to repeat the same things over and over again because they're almost like using it to bond. I think that's a little bit of what's going on here.
I would agree with you, but I actually think it's a really good sign too, because when we go into organizations at a leadership level, they often don't understand why you can't just measure ROI across the platforms. Like those challenges are still not very well known.
That's a really good point.
I think within organizations. So maybe this is like repetitive to us because we live and breathe this all the time, but I don't think it's necessarily, you have to say something 3 times before people learn it. Right. So I think this is maybe not.
You could build a whole political campaign on that thought. Just say it 30 times.
30
never
times.
Mind.
But I think this might feel more novel to some of the audience. And I think that was another thing that I thought was so interesting about this conference is the audience was a real mix of service providers, media companies.
A lot of brand people here.
A lot of brand
lot of brand people that weren't on stage that were here to learn.
Some retailers, media companies that may or may not be playing in retail media right now.
Yeah.
So a really mixed audience. And I think that made it really interesting from a networking perspective because I got to learn a lot of new perspectives as well.
It was phenomenal.
There's also a big in-store componentry to this, which we'll come back to. There's a lot of really straight up in-store experience.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I do want to talk about in-store. I want to talk about offsite because those are big things. The other one I just sat in this morning that was most fascinating was NC Solutions did a presentation with Walmart Connect. And what was interesting is the solution they've built is when we talk about the power of retail media, it's about I expose someone to an ad using the customer shopping behavior of an audience that I've created with retailer A, and then I see if they converted it at retailer A. What NC Solutions and Walmart Connect have said, we can use Walmart audiences to find the Walmart Connect to find the audiences they want. But what NC Solutions can do is actually measure whether that product actually converts at retailer B and retailer C and retailer D, which I think is tremendous. It gives them that rest of market power. I mean, I remember sitting in a meeting at NACDS last year with a health and beauty CPG manufacturer, and they said they know when they do advertising on Amazon and they reduce that advertising, it has a debilitating impact upon their in-store volume at CVS, as an example.
And I think too Amazon, as I joke all the time, gets sort of attributed Voldemort or Thanos kind of capabilities. The capability Amazon uses to do that is readily available. It's Oracle's. So and it's the old data logics business that you and I know from 20 years ago. It's the same basic data set. NCS has always been a competitor to Data Logic in that space. They've been a competitor to Data Logic in that space since 20 years ago, and I was helping run Shopcom at Kantar. So these businesses have always existed in terms of being able to do that.
The fact that the retailers are willing to offer up their audiences, their targeting capability, and then and then partnering with the likes of an NC Solutions to say, and we're going to measure it outside, that to me was a little bit different.
Yeah, it is. And it's also, I think that there's just an awareness gap sometimes between what the tools are capable of doing and the people that would actually need to know what they are.
It's funny when you talk about these capabilities and awarenesses. I sat down, I'm not going to name anybody by name, but I sat down with some people today. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. But I sat down, they had asked me, what is the market saying about this solution? And I had to be honest. I said, they're not saying anything about your solution because there's no awareness of what you do. Your biggest problem is not showing how powerful your capability is and talking about the nuances. It's just letting people know what you do. And there are a lot of players in what is growing because the industry of retail media is growing so rapidly. Everybody wants to be in on the gold rush. And so you've got a whole lot of people that want to be in, and trying to create awareness among a stampede is a little bit challenging.
To borrow a phrase from my kids, I find it to be very sus.
Sus.
I don't believe it. I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, I've worked now with so many providers that are trying to do exactly that. They're trying to measure the impact of retail media expenditures on different
interesting
RMNs across brick and mortar, across one another. Trying to define incrementality. We sit through demos all the time for these service providers, and no one's doing it well. And part of the problem is they have to deal with the self-reported data from each of the retailers.
Right.
So you've got Amazon with their generous attribution window, and you have Instacart with their less generous attribution window. And so it's really hard when the foundational data is so flawed to actually to make
to common size it when it's all
so I'm suspicious of it,
and it's almost purposely different too, which is the other challenge we have. And this is one of the things
they don't want it to be apples.
This is the problem with retail, and this is the problem with the retail side of retail media. Retailers are hardwired to render their demand creating opportunities as differentiated and as incomprehensible as possible. It's a negotiating tool, and it has been.
100%.
And let me explain merchandising.
Tell me more about e-commerce, Brian.
I know. What I really want to explain to you is how to be a buyer. That's the part of the conversation where I think I create enormous value. So for the listeners at home, my habit of explaining things to Andrew, she knows better than I do, goes back a long way.
So one of the things we've talked about on many episodes of the podcast is the fact that through retail media, retailers are seeking to access budgets that here until now have been to the most part unattainable for them. And then I'm talking about activities that are more upper funnel in nature, creating awareness, things that they use linear television or other mechanisms to do. And let's break that down a bit. We've seen a lot of conversations this week around both offsite and in-store. Bryan, I'm going to turn to you to talk about in-store, because you were actually on stage with some friends of ours
for 12 minutes.
For 12?
No, it's 30. So we had a really good panel conversation with Andy Murray, Andrew Lipsman, and Chris from Stratacash. And I mean, I'm up there, but those three guys probably know more about how to bring brands to life in the media environment in store. I mean, Andy knows more about it than probably anybody who walks the earth. The other two, it's a very robust conversation. I think a couple of things that came out of that. One, it was really interesting. Obviously, with Stratacash being part of the conversation. Keep you up, man.
No.
No. Dude, I get it. So, Andrea, why don't you answer? Keep Peter away.
I'm going to grab my energy drink over there.
So,
I haven't slept in 3 days. This is too much excitement in this conference.
Well, not the only one. Anyway, the in-store componentry. So I think there's a couple of interesting things. We had a really interesting conversation about the blurring, the transition, if you will, from people using their phones like you're doing, to trying to figure out what the physical in-store screen and what some of the pluses and minuses were of each, and how I really thought that Andrew's point that he made during our presentation about the phone being a point of failure in the retail media experience. Like if you've got your phone out, that means something somewhere along the way isn't working right? Like
while you're in the store.
Yes. Yeah. And
it doesn't have to be like that.
No, it
could be an accretive experience.
I think what Ulta Beauty is trying to do with use the phone as a mechanism to capture all.
I think that's. I just thought it was an interesting way. I just thought it was an interesting way to put it. That if you're not careful about it and choiceful and thoughtful, as say an Ulta is, that the phone coming out. And the other problem with the phone coming out, of course, is that the thing that lives on your phone that devours your wallet is usually Amazon, right? So the minute you start to get the failure and the friction, which I'm going to use as PH words. So you've got the phone, the failure, the friction that come out of that. If you're not using the phone the right way.
Being illiterate. He's trying to be alliterative, but not really.
Thank you for correcting my spelling. So you're, okay. I know it's sus. So when you think about all that, I just think there's an interest, and the screens basically what they do allow you to do is a couple of things. Number one, they allow you to control content a little bit more effectively. They allow you to do different things with content. I mean, in the end, the thing a screen gives a media buyer is something they recognize, and I really do wonder sometimes whether the entire notion of in-store media is about creating a media environment.
Totally. It's like, it looks like, let's make it look like media and smell like media, and then we can get in those media budgets. How about that?
Right. Call it retail media.
Yeah, exactly. So in order to get a media buyer to understand it, it has to look like a television screen.
And it can't look like a poster.
It was interesting because I actually had a conversation offline with somebody else on that front too, because they're like, well, what do you think about the non-digital assets, like the physical ones? And I said, well, look, here's the actual problem with that. The closer you get to a physical asset in store, the closer you get to something that's already been planned as part of a commercial plan, not a media plan, that's tied to a wide range of other activities, particularly to major retailer. So we were talking about Target. She's like, well, what about the physical assets at Target? I'm like, well, one, you got to realize that for the average CPG company, they may spend more on that stuff at Target than they spend on media. Not media at Target. Media. like it's an enormous line item in the budget. The things that happen to it change the price of products often, or change their display, which means it changes their forecasted volume for a very large retail customer, which means it changes their enterprise replenishment planning system, which means it changes their manufacturing forecast. Like a 27-year-old media buyer doesn't get to mess around with that. Like that's just not where they belong. So yet, until you figure out a way for that interface to work better, the notion that we're going to collapse these budgets together, as media teams seem to want to do, because media teams get paid on commission. So they obviously want to collapse the budget because they get paid more. But in real life, there's no good business reason to collapse those yet until people that are going to have the budget collapse to them, prove they understand what the commercial ramifications are of that collapse. So that's
interesting that you say that, because it kind of ties back to the way Amazon approaches it, which is that they distinctly keep those conversations separate.
Yes.
And I've always thought that was for their benefit, because they can they have more negotiating power. They can negotiate commercial terms, and then they can negotiate ad spend, and they can make those appear to be really separate entities. But there are reasons that the brands should do it that way.
Well, the brands to some degree have to, because there's some Robinson-Patman rules around money that gets spent on one thing and not the other, and all that other. There's some antitrust rules.
But like in reality, that's not how it's happening. I mean, it is happening. Conversations.
And I think this is one of the ways in which the Amazon ecosystem is quite different, because it kind of grew up in a slightly more as separate as I know it felt to you on the Amazon side. There's nothing like PackView that exists in the CPG world to integrate media and merchandising and in stocks and inventory and share the way that it exists in the Amazon world. And I mean, y'all and your smart friends grew up and built that ecosystem so that it worked in a more integrated way than the omni-channel ones do today. Mm-hmm. The amount of wiring it would take to get PackView to work in the omni-channel world, and not just in the digital space, right? I know Melissa's doing great stuff there, but to actually encompass the whole omni-channel merchandising plan into something like that. Just imagine that, Peter. The system you would need to do that would like break space. Like it's like, there's so many variables, and it's so complex that you're going to have to figure out ways to build, to use Kara's phrase, trusted bridges between things that are embedded in the organization, rather than think about how I'm going to just magically wave a magic wand and integrate it all.
I don't know that it's impossible, but it's definitely two different audiences.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So I don't know it's impossible either, but it's probably something that it's something that should be approached with some caution. Let's put it that way.
All right. So moving on from in-store, let's talk a little bit about offsite, because that was also a lot of the conversations we've seen on stage today, really capabilities to advertise. Is offsite really a meaningful and lucrative revenue stream for retail media network for retailers, or what do you think? You don't know as I do. My concern is that when you talk about doing programmatic advertising, there's not a lot of margin in that. And the question is, how much does having a behavior-based audience with rich customer data, how much does it really add to the overall lucrativeness of offsite advertising? I mean, it seems to me that still the 900-pound gorilla is search.
Programmatic advertising exists for one simple reason: to enable people to buy advertising that they wouldn't buy if it were harder to buy.
Yeah.
That's the only reason programmatic advertising exists.
Yeah.
And I fundamentally, and this, sorry for those of you trying to do this, I don't understand what the obsession is with programmatic advertising in retail media. People want to buy the assets in retail media. There's a shortage of inventory in retail media for the most part, not a surplus. And if you don't have a surplus of inventory, programmatic advertising is a margin compressing bad idea. It's good for the buyer. Like media buyers love programmatic advertising because
they understand to buy it.
Well, it's simple, but it's not good for the seller at all.
No,
at least as far as I can tell.
Why?
Right? Because if you can sell all your inventory without having to grind it up and sell it as feedstock, like if you're a corn farmer and you can go to the farmer's market and sell all your corn, why would you sell it to the pig slop company down the road to have it ground up and ground into feedstock, which is basically what programmatic advertising kind of does. So it's
interesting metaphor.
But if you can sell all the assets that you've got without having to do that, why would you do that? Like the only reason programmatic advertising exists is so people can sell banner ads on websites nobody's ever heard of, or whatever it is. I mean, that's kind of its foundational reason for being, is to make it faster and easier to buy stuff that you
and
wouldn't
just so
buy
we're clear, when you talk about programmatic, you're talking about offsite DSP stuff that retail media is selling.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the main reason that they're trying to sell that is because that's how they get into media budgets.
Right.
Like that's the only way. Otherwise, you're stuck in trade funding. At least for outside.
Well, for offsite, it's different, right? For offsite.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to. clarify.
Yeah. So I'm thinking more on-site, right? So for offsite, it's different. Then an offsite, you have to, because an offsite, what the retailer is really serving up is an audience, right? As much as anything, right? They're not. So if you're serving an audience, that's a different thing than selling your assets, So does that make sense, Peter? Or?
No, it absolutely does.
Right.
So what I wanted to do is, with the time we have left, just go through the lightning round.
Sure.
The lightning round. And it's more just ask you some quick little questions. Is what are you walking away from here? Excited to learn more about that you heard people talking about? Bryan?
Well, two. One, I really do. I mean, I'm just blowing smoke up your yells, but that conversation you were having about how generative AI is going to change not just search, but everything that kind of hangs off of search and the entire digital and merchandising, that I'd love to hear more about. I think secondly, just, sort of selfishly, since it was the part I was involved in, but this in-store component, I think there's so much more to go in terms of trying to figure out, because it does need to connect somehow, right? So, we're running, my Retail Cities business is running an event September 14th called Double Jointed Planning, where we're basically trying to figure out how you bring together the two joint business plans that sit with a retailer today. So you've got a joint commercial plan, but then you've got a joint media plan. And those two things have really nothing in common at all. Like they don't have common language or vocabulary or frames. So how do you try to integrate that? I'd love to hear more about how companies are actually trying to do the work in the omni-channel retailers, particularly of actually bringing together those plans.
Andrea?
I mean, we're pretty deep in our research on AI impact on commerce for a course and workshop that we're building right now. So we've been doing a lot of subject matter expert interviews and really trying to research that. And so I'm pretty mired in that space right now, thinking about how is that going to change commerce? I mean, retail media is just a component of that, right? It's going to change commerce in a lot of different ways, disrupt a lot of the foundational building blocks. And so that's where my head's going to be at, I think, for the next few months in thinking through that a little bit more. Another thing that I kind of want to learn a little more about is the audience at this conference was pretty, like we said, pretty mixed. And there were a lot of providers in sort of like tangential industries like banking and some other industries, and thinking about how retail media can connect into those spaces. Or I don't know, maybe connect's not the right word, but
what can learn maybe or
no, like Tom Burgess from Snip Interactive is an old friend of mine.
Exactly.
I think him being here, and he's really heavily deep in the banking industry, that's really intriguing to it.
Right.
To
like they're making item level offers to banking customers. Like that could be an extension of retail media. So I feel like there are some innovations that might happen in this space that are in tangential industries that could be interesting.
Were there any things that you thought you'd hear more talk about at this conference that you're a little underwhelmed in terms of addressing?
For me, I think I didn't hear as many actionable insights, and particularly as it relates to measurement. So, we hear lots of sessions about how it's imperfect, but like, what's the best we can do right now? Like
show how the sausage is made.
Yeah. Like maybe hearing from, again, some of the brands that are deep in it, or from some of the service providers who are trying to crack the problem, and just like getting a little more tactical.
I wonder if that's because people feel it's sort of a competitive advantage if they can do it right now.
Maybe.
I don't know. There's two for me. One, and one was sequential because I just missed some of the conversations about it because I was in other things. And this would have been my lightning round answer had I remembered this particular bolt. I think the linkage between retail media and connected TV is going to transform literally everything. So, because if you look at where audiences are going in terms of content consumption, traceable, personally identifiable content consumption through video today and through whatever augmented reality supplements video tomorrow. That's what people are going to be watching, right? So the ability to take individual viewing and content consumption data and marry it to individual transactional data is transformational. I mean, I said this at some point, I think to Kara, but it wouldn't surprise me if that ecosystem of, identifiable viewership and connected purchase is the largest advertising platform in the world by 2030. I would have loved to have heard more about that.
I thought cutting the cable was going to save me money. I then went and realized last month that my household subscribes to 11 streaming services.
And be careful if you cancel one of those, because you might get an angry text from one of your kids like I did. Why can't I get into the Hulu anymore? I didn't think anyone was watching it.
What was underwhelming for me was Bryan and I were at Amazon Unboxed last year, and that was actually the first time I was exposed to this concept of non-endemic advertising. So advertising that occurs on a platform for products that aren't sold on that platform. And Amazon had someone, I think, from Carnival Cruise Lines up on stage. And I heard a lot of buzz for months about how important non-endemic advertising could be to these platforms. I didn't hear anything about that.
Well, it does
at this show.
I think if you were to provide a counterpoint to retail media is the next big thing, that would be it, right? Like, why don't we have more non-endemic advertisers advertising on Amazon, for example? Like, there have been such a limited number of them over the course of their existence. Yeah. And if that was really a media platform, right? Like, if Amazon was really truly considered a media platform with a large audience, wouldn't there be more non-endemic?
I think the canary in that particular whatever is going to be, I think it's going to be the retailers for whom their audience is their most interesting attributes. Our retailer I'd watch for that is not Walmart or Amazon, it's Macy's, right? Macy's digital audience.
Home Depot.
No, just let me finish. So
I love throwing that in just
start throwing in other names.
Yeah, he's like, no. Let me focus on Macy's.
No, because I actually know because it wouldn't be Home Depot for the example I'm going to use. I think Home Depot is an interesting non-endemic platform, perhaps for like insurance for businesses where your audience has significantly different needs. For Macy's, I think the interesting thing is because their audience is the most interesting thing about them, right? Their online audience, they're one of the few in the famous Andrew Lipsman chart where their online audience is actually bigger than their in-store audience.
Right.
They're a bigger digital presence, and a lot of that digital presence is an audience. There are enormous numbers of people that would want to sell to the wide range of people that shop at Macy's something else. That would be but Macy's in and of itself, God bless them, doesn't sell a ton of stuff on its own. So if there is ever going to be a retailer that's going to turn itself into a non-endemic retail media network, it's going to be a retailer that needs to. Home Depot doesn't need to. That was my point. So, somebody like Macy's probably does. So I think you'll see some of these retailers that are struggling a little bit commercially try to figure out how to turn themselves into advertising platforms in a very different way.
Okay. So my last question is going to be, based on what you've heard here at this show, what is encouraging to you, is inspiring to you in terms of why being a part of the retail media industry is going to be truly transformative and good for all the parties involved, the brand, the retailer, and ultimately the consumer? Is there anything that you hear us talking about that you think, wow, this actually is great?
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that this conference existed is pretty important. Like, these conversations are happening. There are not a lot of solutions yet, but at least we're at the commiseration phase. So that feels important, like an important phase in the journey. And then I feel like we heard from and I met a lot of smart people here. Yeah. So that was encouraging because they're going to figure out how to do this better. They're going to figure out how to measure it. They're going to figure out how to execute it better. And that's just the people who made it here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Never mind the people trapped in Newark.
Did you want to talk about your travel exploits, Andrea?
Please.
It's an inside joke, people. Sorry.
And no.
But I agree. There were a lot of really intelligent, wise people. Not just intelligent. Like, they're intelligent. I try to describe that intelligence is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of intelligent but very wise people here.
And a lot of people who've been in the media industry for a long time. And it was interesting talking with some of them because I spend a lot of my time with digital commerce people. Yep. And I feel like the media POV was really different, right? It was like, this is another form of media. Yep. Yeah. We had all these same problems a long time ago.
I would echo the tomato fruit people. Yes. So I agree.
I'm a tomato fruit person.
Yeah. You're a tomato fruit person. TFP.
That's an acronym.
You're intelligent.
We actually broke it down.
So we were just talking about how a tomato is a fruit, not to put it in a fruit salad. So
that's what kind of person I am.
Right.
You could just go to Wisconsin and there's no vegetables.
Or here in Chicago where there's no seafood.
Right.
Unless it's square, breaded, and deep fried.
Yes. If you want calamari flavored chewing gum, we know where to go.
If you're at the Classic Dive Miller's Pub in Chicago, do not order
grilled calamari.
Any type of seafood that isn't deep fried. Yeah, you will be disappointed.
Just go for the deep fried.
Yeah, really embrace it. Couple of points. I do think. Yeah, I think the intelligence / wisdom of the group here, I think is pretty remarkable. I think there's also a sense, and I was talking to Andy Murray about this actually. I think there's a sense that there's still today a relatively small cadre of people who understand enough of this to be able to figure out kind of where it is and where it's going. So that for all of the importance of it, I mean, whether it's going to be $100 billion by 2026, a la McKinsey, or the largest advertising platform in the world by 2030, a la me, you've still got a pretty narrow group of people, right? And it's like the early days of anything. Like I can still remember the early days of Shopper, for God's sake, because I'm old, right? But, Andy Murray and Dina Howell and the P&G team that were working on that, and Mike Twitty and Nancy Davis at Unilever. It was like 25
Milton Berle, Don Rickles. Oh, sorry. Different
anyway.
Different.
But the 25 people that got Shopper back in the day, or the 25 people that got e-commerce back in your day. So, the Eric Hellers of the world and the Melissas and all your cronies. I think we're at that stage right now, and I think it's really fun. It's always just enormously inspirational to be part of a it's that great Margaret Mead quote. It's never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world, because it's the only thing that ever has.
I think we should end on that.
I think we will. I want to thank Bryan Gildenberg, CEO of Confluencer Commerce and one of the CPG guys. I'll just do those. And of course, the incomparable Andrea Leigh, who is the founder and CEO of Allume Group. And of course, part of the CPG Guys family. She is one of the co-hosts of the Fresh Four. I want to thank you both for taking the time out of this conference to do this little repartee between the three of us. We'd love to just riff.
It's a cadre of repartee.
A cadre of repartee. We're going to go on stage right after we're done recording this. We're going on stage to do. We kind of primed ourselves for this conversation, but I want to thank you both for joining me today. And with that, I'm going to say to our audience, please follow us on LinkedIn if you're not already doing so. There'll be hyperlinks to both Confluencer Commerce and to Allume Group in the digital liner notes of this podcast. You should avail yourselves of some really great solutions that both of these two wise and intelligent luminaries are providing to the industry around thought leadership and capabilities. And with that, I'm just going to say thank you for joining us, and we look forward to speaking with you on the next episode of, wait for it, the CPG Guys podcast. Goodbye.
Bye.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.